So,
Mm.
and and many times, by the time the service is over and we're home, not all the time, but sometimes the issue is gone.
Yeah, yeah. But the devil will use your emotions to
Mm,
distract you from the word, and you don't want to be up there preaching, looking down at your wife and resenting her, or knowing she is steaming at you. And when you get home, you're going to hear about it, you
right.
know.
Well, what about, and I haven't had many of these, but what about if the wife chooses to stay home and she's not coming in and you're looking for her throughout the service? So your head's now preoccupied with where, where is she? And
Right, right.
so she's in
Those
pain, you're in
mm,
pain.
those can be tough times. And very early in our marriage, there was one day where Joan was not feeling well, and she was, she just was angry. Um, she was nothing I said, nothing I could do would be right, and she was just like spitting mad.
Mm.
And I turned to her and I said, "Honey, stay home. Don't." I said, "I don't want you to come to church today. You stay home." And she went back in the house. I don't think she liked it when I told her that, but
Right, right.
when I got home, she was okay. But for me to have forced her, and she was forcing herself. My wife is a woman of she has this great sense of duty, right?
Hmm.
She's I'm committed to my husband, my family, and my church, to my God. I'm gonna be there, you know. And but on that day, boy, she she was a hot mess. And so we had that confrontation trying just as we were about to get in the car. I said, "No, not you, not today. You got to go home." And
Now, when you said that, I don't ever recall telling Karen to stay home because we had tension or get out or get out of the car because she was saying, "You get out of the car." No, no, you get out of the car.
Mhm.
So uh, did that hurt her when you asked her to leave the car? Did she understand what you were really trying to say to her?
Oh yeah, I think she got it. She knew she was emotionally. It was just one of those days where emotionally she was just all over the place. She was just
Yeah,
exploding.
yeah.
And so it wasn't that I was mad at her. It wasn't even an argument. Thankfully, if it was an argument, I probably would never have said that, because then that would
Okay.
have just made it worse. It was
Yes.
her emotional state at the moment. And sometimes I wish somebody had told me that. Said, "You need not to come to church today. You need to stay home." But
Well,
this is my calling, my job. I got to do this.
there are some times when Karen is home, she works from the house, and so when she's in the place where she's working, I defer to her because right now she's on the job. I can't ask her to do this. I can't ask her to do that.
Right, right.
I got a little work, and so I'm careful. Now, sometimes when I'm home and I'm getting the Zoom set up, I'm getting something done to get ready for what I have to do. Sometimes it doesn't come back in my favor for her to say, I'm not going to ask Bruce to go to the store and get me something because he's working right now. No, go to the store and pick this up. So it's really trying to find a balance and I because since I've had this medical situation, Karen may differ and say it's been longer. I've experienced more. Um, I'm not that patient. I'm not that clear
Mm,
because I'm fighting another battle, you know, and
yeah.
and I'm and I'm always trying to separate the health battle that I'm fighting from because of how I feel
Mm,
with I don't want to say that's how I feel about Karen or that she's caused me to feel this way. I've got to constantly like keep cutting and saying, no, that's not her, that's me. That's not her, that's me. I'm feeling this way because of this. How have you ever found yourself feeling a certain way, and then you drew the conclusion? Your conclusion was it was what you were going through. It wasn't being caused by Joan.
Yeah, I think every once in a while you get those. The Lord gives you grace to realize it. She's not my enemy. You
Hmm.
know, it's my own struggle inside myself. And it would be sometimes easier, you want to take out your frustrations or your uh, anxieties on your spouse, and that's never good. Um, you know, and I think both of us, and if I might put words in your mouth, I know you're grateful for your wife,
Hmm.
and I'm grateful for mine. And we just got back, from about 2 weeks going to South America, and on some pretty long flights. Like it's a
Hmm.
10-hour flight from Buenos Aires back to Texas, where we entered the U.S. But man, it was just a privilege to be with Joan, and she's so committed to our ministry together, and she's so gracious to the people that we meet, and she's so very much we work as a team when we go, and being under that kind of pressure and traveling, being at 9,000 feet in Bogota, um, you know, where it was hard to breathe, uh,
Hmm.
having to keep a schedule moving quickly. It's just a blessing to be with her. So I thank God for that.
Well, um, and that brings up another thing that I don't want to go on trips necessarily, or even extended vacations, because there's a part of me where I want to be close to my doctors right now because I haven't got the trauma that I went through is still real. I've
Mm,
got to find a way to work this trauma out of my life. And
mm.
Karen had mentioned, let's go on a cruise, let's do this, let's do that. But sometimes when you're on a tour, they have bathroom stops, but they're not going to be frequent enough for me.
Yeah, yeah,
So I've said I, I don't really care to go on vacation. I don't really care to do this. And again, I don't want to be what's the term? I don't want to be denying her the privilege of denying her an opportunity for her and I to go away together. So again, here it goes again. I'm trying to find that balance. And I don't talk about my medical matters.
yeah,
I try not to do that at the house. I try to just zip it, and I don't do it much on the air. I'm doing it a little bit now, but I don't do it much on the air. And I
yeah.
try not to say much about it in the sanctuary. My pastor, Reverend Haynes, when he had reached the point where his medical matters were extremely dominant in his thinking, half of the sermon would be his bursitis or his eyes or his ears, and
Oh,
we knew every Sunday we were going to hear about
what he was
what was
struggling with.
going on, right?
Yeah,
And he couldn't help himself because it was
yeah,
dominant,
yeah,
and it was impacting him.
yeah,
But because I've seen that and experienced it, and we know Stephen was at a point where he had so many medical things happening with him,
yeah.
he had to get it off his chest, and he got it off his chest with us because we
Yes,
were his buddies, we were his pals.
yeah, yeah,
But I'm trying very hard to not find myself dominating, having dominated uh, my conversations and broadcasts,
you
me
know that
talking about my health things.
that's pretty cool that you have that self-awareness, because a lot of times when we're hurting and we are discouraged, um, we need to vent, we need some therapy, as it were, um, and we become boring to other people, especially
Right.
the younger people, you know.
Yeah.
They go, oh my gosh, he's an old man. He's going to tell me all his problems, you
Right.
know. And yeah, for you to have the self-awareness and ask God to help you discipline your tongue, and that's a good thing, man. You're ahead of the game there. But I will tell you, you're not an evil person at all because that's just reality. When you have chronic problems and illnesses, like we saw with our brother Stephen, it
Hmm.
overwhelms you. That's the
Hmm.
reality of living in a fallen world. And,
Hmm.
sometimes we get really bothered by poor people because their poverty overwhelms them and they meet us, you know, we'd say, it would be great to have a relationship with you if you didn't always talk about how hungry you were.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's how stupid it sounds. But we get irritated at people who confront us with their problems. And, we would prefer to be around people who are totally self contained. You got a problem, you keep it to yourself, and maybe, God will fix it. But that's part of living in a fallen world. We live in always in the midst, a context of disaster, as it were. Either it's coming or we're out of it or we're in it, you know. And it just it's a miracle of God's kindness when we can just live a life, trust in Him, full of joy, even sometimes when we're hurting really bad.
Hmm.
And anyway,
Well, when Pastor Stephen was going through the worst of the worst, I felt that he trusted us uh,
mm-hmm,
to love him while he was hurting,
mm-hmm,
and I felt that it was a privilege that he trusted us to
mm-hmm,
share, whether it's on camera or off camera. And now that he's transitioned, I missed him telling us the stories about what he was going through. But again, I'm trying to discipline myself, and I'm trying to set an example. You mentioned some people when they're going through what I'm going through seek counseling to, to have a professional counselor help them to balance this off. Um, and I rather than going to see a counselor and spending my money, what I've done, I've got friends that I can say, let's just go out, and it's
mm-hmm,
intentional. We're going to talk about you, and then we're going to talk about me. And as
mm-hmm.
long as they have an opportunity to open up and talk about some of the things that they're dealing with, they don't feel that it's just one-sided.
Yeah,
And that has helped me.
yes,
And
yes.
so
Well,
so
I've
enough.
as a pastor, I've had people in my church going through divorce, and
Hmm.
I've had men who especially who were really falling apart emotionally because their
Hmm.
wife was divorcing them or their marriage had ended, and they wanted to talk every day.
Hmm.
And I remember telling them, "Look," I said, "on Sunday, don't worry about it. You come to church, you're with people. But the other 6 days, you need six friends. You
Hmm.
need a Monday friend, a Tuesday friend, different people, six of them, that on Monday you can say to that guy, hey, will you let me on Monday just unload to you about what I'm going through
Hmm.
today? Because
Hmm.
if you only have one friend and you unload on him every day
Yeah.
about how lonely you feel and how hurt you are, you'll destroy that relationship. You'll just
Hmm.
consume it.
Hmm.
And so that's some of the advice I've given people go through divorce. I mean, if you can pay for therapy and you have a counselor who can help you, that's a wonderful thing. But some people, they don't have the money for that. But if they have friends who can bear the burden, can
Hmm.
shoulder it, that's
Hmm.
a great blessing.
Hmm. We used to have a marriage ministry in our church, and it went well for a while. And Karen was doing more of the leading than I was. She was really the visionary on the
Mm-hmm.
marriage ministry at our church. It started very well, but it just petered out because I think we started playing games and getting to know each other, interact interacting with each other. but sooner or later we had to go beyond that and get to the real meat of why
Oh
we
yeah.
were
Oh
meeting,
yeah.
right? So then we went into that phase of some people talked and some people didn't talk. And to be honest with you, I didn't feel that it was a safe place for Karen and I
Mm.
because I've seen I know we both have seen the church leaders who didn't like you use the things that you said in your
Ooh.
vulnerability
Ooh.
to 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 cash in and get rid of you.
Mm. Mm.
And you know, and we also have a prayer group that meets every day, Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock in the morning. But that's not my prayer group. That's not the prayer group that I would go to and pray and unload and I need something else that will for me that would be
Yeah.
with pastors that I trusted.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a church prayer group that that you were a part of and you and Joan felt it was safe to share before you prayed?
Good question. Um, I have always been very shy as a pastor about being committed to one small group or one prayer group. Um, One is because of my schedule. It
Hmm.
just, I hate to commit to a group and then be here, gone. It just disturbs everybody.
Hmm.
And also my presence as the pastor I'm the heavy in the room. I'm the word of last resort. I'm the one who says, no, that's not what that means. This is what it means.
Hmm.
And I found that I'm not a good player in that thing. Um,
Hmm.
and trust is really an important thing. A lot of my struggles, I mean, I have really good friends and a few really, really good friends that I would tell everything to. Um, but that's a delicate thing for a pastor. And I'll give you a story that happened when we first started at the job I have now. I'm the pastor for missions at a Presbyterian church. And 2 years ago,
Hmm.
I started that job just short of 1 month of 2 years. And I was invited to a small group, Joan and I, in our neighborhood. And they said, oh, we have a small group from the church just down the street from you. I said, okay. And they said, come on Sunday night, and we came. And in that group, a guy said, this is a group in which you can trust us. You can let your hair down and just tell us what you're going through. And we're going to hold it in confidence. And we got home and Joan said, that's the last time I'm going to that group.
Uh-oh.
And I said, why? And she said, I mean, we don't know those people, we're brand new. And they're telling me, as the only Black person in the room, you
Hmm.
can trust us with your feelings. And she said, I know I can't do that. You know,
Hmm.
they would have to earn my trust
Right.
before I would be confident that could happen. And, I totally agree with her. It was not wise. She was wise enough to hear that and say, that's not really true. That's what you
Right.
want to be true.
Right. Right.
But
Right. Right.
but our experience is that you got to develop trust and deep friendships. How do I know you're a person of integrity? Just
Hmm.
because you say you can trust me. You know, tell me all your anxieties. Tell me your fears about the church. No way. And
Right.
so it
Right.
takes
Right.
time to build that kind of thing.
Did you ever go back to the group or
Nope.
was because sometimes those that's like the boilerplate of comments that people make when a new person comes into a group. You know, you can trust us. Well, and I'm going, you don't even know my last name, you
There you
know,
go.
to be
There
making
you
that
go.
comment. And I remember here at Global Ministries when it was Dorchester Temple when I first came, the people who were here who called Pastor Craig and I to be their pastor, uh, they in the deacons meetings, I attended the deacons meetings. We would play these. relationship building games before we did the work. I've never seen that before. I usually go into
Mhm.
a meeting, we have an agenda, we move on it. But they had a game that they always play that would teach you how to trust the other person. So Karen and I and Pastor House, we all got involved, all giddy, all excited about it until until the relationships, until we all had met enough that we got to the core of who we all were, and people began to say, I don't really like this one, or I don't really like that one, because people started opening up and speaking and saying how they really feel about the church and this and
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
So just like you and Joan have had enough experience to say in that first meeting, these people don't know really what they're talking about.
Mhm.
They've extended this offer to us, but they
Mhm.
don't even know us. And so I have been through that enough that I don't want to go through something like that
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
So I
And
just felt it was a waste of time.
and I'm sure that they were very sincere in that. But within a few months, in fact, the very couple that said that left the church.
Eek.
And so I'm going, and my wife usually has a great intuitive sense about what's going on, and she's brutally honest usually about those things. And
Hmm.
so I've learned to listen to her, for which
Hmm.
I'm very grateful. Um, by the way, we need to pray for Calvary Gospel Church.
Okay.
Um, they just lost one of their deacons,
Mm.
Chad Beaumont. I don't know if you'd ever met Chad.
The name
Um,
sounds familiar, but I can't put the face with the name.
and he is a retired police officer.
Okay.
He was a deacon of the church. He was a great supporter of Stephen Davis, and just a very quiet, steady, competent man. He's always there. Always, his mother Grace, and his stepfather, who married Grace, is one of the elders of the church. And Grace,
Okay.
she was just a Jamaican church lady. She just
Hmm.
right there, blessing the church, and they were completely supportive of Stephen and Denise. And then he just suddenly died. I was with him at Peniel
Mm.
last month, and he loved Peniel, and he was up there just enjoying renewing relationships with a lot of people, and so good to be with him. And he had an aneurysm and
Eek.
died suddenly.
Eek.
So pray for Calvary Gospel, because they're grieving again at the loss
Mm.
of one of their dear leaders.
That's painful to hear. And adding to that, um, who is who has the preaching assignment every Sunday in their church at this point?
Well, they have the one remaining associate pastor, and Horner, Pastor Horner, who works full time as an artist, an art instructor at a local art college,
Mhm.
and so he's able to work part time at the church to help. But they've had a list, a roster of visiting preachers, and they have a committee looking for the new pastor. And
Mhm.
so it's going to take them some time. And again, part of their problem is the finances of being able to afford. Um, they can't really pay a pastor a full salary, so it's going to have to be a pastor who's willing to come part time at first until he
Mhm.
can bring, hopefully build up the congregation. Um, but it's a tough situation.
Um, yeah, that is tough. About how long do you predict? How long do you say to a group that's working to find a new pastor? How much time do you think it takes for them to start the process to finishing it? Is it a year? Is it 2 years? How long a process is it usually?
I would say it depends on what their strategy is between the time they lost their pastor and the time they get the new one. In other words, if they don't hire an interim, which gives them some more time and space to go
Mhm.
slow to find the next guy. Then they'll be more desperate to find the next guy. And that's not always the wisest thing. Now, sometimes the Lord, has somebody, or as they say, a ram in the bush. He has somebody that the Lord is directing to go there, and they find them fairly quickly. Hallelujah. But I would say it's a lot safer for a church, unless, like you, they're looking long range and they're planning and they got a strategy to say how my transition, how that's going to be. In this case, they knew that a change was coming. They just didn't know it would happen that suddenly.
Mhm.
And an interim allows you a lot more space. And as to whether or not they can find somebody, and an interim, the kind of thing you want from an interim is somebody who says, I'm not interested in being the full-time pastor.
Pastor, right. I'm
I'm
not
just
here to change the church.
right. And because if I come as the pastor, I'm going to analyze what's going on. I'm going to give you a plan. I'm going to give you a strategy, a vision. Um, an interim says, I'm a caretaker. I'm going to
Right.
preach to you every Sunday. I'm going to visit your sick in the hospital. I'll moderate some meetings, but I'm not going to try to really lead you. Um,
Correct.
and so that's a really important kind of a person if you can find somebody who's good at it.
When you were at New Fellowship and you
New City
started this
Fellowship,
New City,
yes.
I keep saying New Fellowship, New City Fellowship. Did you have different intervals of transformation and growth? For example, when I was at Global, then known as Dorchester Temple, the first 5 years was just listening, trying to figure out how did I get into this, and just trust processing it. And then the next 5 years was like things were getting kind of hot and heavy because
Mm,
the
mm,
congregation recognized that they had two pastors, and the two pastors had a vision, even though the former leaders didn't want to relinquish the
mm.
responsibility for the pastors to provide the leadership. And after 10 years of being there, I finally, Craig and I found one thing that we were doing right, just one thing that was working. And we leaned into that for another 10 years until we began to see the church begin to prosper. Do you recall the what the year transition was for you in New City Fellowship? When you came, doing the street work, having to rent a building to here. Did you ever have a troubled time at New City Fellowship where you thought that you and Joan were not going to make it through? Or was it a little bit easier because you founded the church versus going into a church where they had a pre-existing leader and elders and deacons, and they were reluctant to release it to you?
Well, in some ways, it is easier when you plant a church. People basically are saying, "We want you to lead," because without you, basically in the beginning, there is no church.
Okay.
But we certainly went through periods of opposition, and they were sometimes surprising to us.
Mm.
Usually it was from one or two other leaders in the church who basically did not either like me or they did not like my leadership style. Um, I think they gave outward agreement to our vision, the cross cultural vision that was here,
Hmm.
the vision to help the poor. Nobody came against those things specifically, except one leader. But several of them, one particular guy who was also one of the preachers and on the elder board, he did some things behind my back You know, basically uh, he betrayed me to other people.
That's
And
tough.
oh man, I'll give you an example. We at one time got in talk to a conversation with another congregation. They had a building. We did not have a building. They were dwindling. We were growing, and but we were the same denomination. A lot of our people lived in the same neighborhood, and so we began to talk. And we said, "What do you think about us joining together, merging?" And uh, our session and their elders and our elders said, okay, we need a 2/3 vote of each congregation to make this happen.
Mhm.
And our elders said, let's do this. Let's move forward. Then we have a congregational meeting, and this other elder, he stands up and he said, you know, I don't agree with this plan. Now, he had never said that in the meeting of elders. In front of the congregation, he gets up and puts himself, he said, you know, that's their idea. I don't think this is a good idea, you know, and
Can I ask you this question? With what you just said about him, and you never saw this coming, correct?
no,
So when a person stands up like that, rather than coming to you before the meeting or after the meeting and having the conversation, is that person's declaration of war?
pretty much.
Okay,
I mean, at least he showed his colors publicly
right.
that all the other elders, you know, sort of took our breath away and said, what is this guy doing? Now, he
Hmm.
had done something to me just like that. We had gone to counsel a lady who was going through a divorce, and she asked me what I thought, and we talked, and I left. After I left, he tells her, I don't know why Randy said that. He's wrong. You know, I mean, he just
Wow,
undercut me.
wow.
And I think that was his essentially, it was a power play on his part, a thing of jealousy. I want to be the pastor here. And, you know, the good thing is he and his wife left. They went away to school. And after they graduated, he took a church and he blew that church up. You know, he got fired within a year or two because
Yeah.
that was his personality. But I just was blindsided, you know.
Hmm.
And I've learned some things over the years about people who are like that. It's
Yeah.
usually envy or jealousy. It's certainly dishonesty. And, you know, I, if he, it was fine for him to disagree. And just like you said, he could have come to me sooner. He could have come
Right.
to me. And by the way, I don't agree. And, you know, and then I could have told everybody that. I said,
Right.
we are not in agreement about this.
Right. Right. Right.
By the way, as it turned out, we did not merge with them, which was a
Hmm.
blessing to us.
Hmm.
We were going to do it. We came through to over 2/3. They didn't make the 2/3. So we said, okay, it's off. In God's providence, we got a much bigger building, and our church just took off
Hmm.
and grew. So, hallelujah.
Yeah, those are serious struggles, and right now I have a young lady who attends another church, and she wanted me to be her watch care pastor as she prepares for ordination in the American Baptist Church.
Huh.
And one of the things that I put on the schedule for me to talk with her about was how to survive a split church, how to survive a church that has decided that people will go in separate ways. Because when that happens in many churches, sometimes the poor pastor is left with a smaller group, and the group that feels that the grass was greener on the other side, that's where they go.
Yeah, yeah.
And quite frankly, I don't know about you, but it was never taught in seminary or in Bible school how to survive a split in the church. And I think that's something that every young pastor needs to understand, that that can happen, and the ways of continuing the ministry after something like that, because
Oh,
that is
man.
that is horrendous. But I shared an hour with her on that because no one ever taught me that.
Yeah. How did she respond? Did she say, "Why are you teaching me this?"
Right. When you haven't experienced it, because the church that she's in has not had that kind of a split. And sometimes it's like teaching somebody algebra or geometry. Sometimes people say, well, I'm not going to use this. Why are you teaching this to me? Until they have to use it.
Oh
But
my
again,
gosh.
it may help her down the line because I'm trying to look at the many things that was never taught to me
Yeah.
that could have devastated me if the Lord didn't guide me, and if I chose to listen to my hurt versus listening to
Mm.
the Lord guiding me.
Oh,
And I'm
say
sure
that
you've had
again.
those.
Say that
Really,
again.
but when I you listen to your hurt, how you're feeling, you want that pain to end any way you can.
Uh,
And
uh.
sometimes the easiest way is to get out of there, to jump out
Yes,
of there,
yes,
and
yes.
and and teaching people how to stand, even when three-quarters of the people leave and you're left with a small group and you
Lord
don't know
have
how you're going
mercy.
to do it. Then
Lord have mercy.
you begin to doubt yourself, you begin to blame yourself, and
Yes.
you can't analyze. You're so hurt, you can't analyze what really happened because sometimes when you analyze it, you find out that the only mistake you made was allowing a particular person to stay in leadership too long because they were the ones who were successful to take all of your ideas, all of your resources, and move it to another place. And sometimes those people slide into your leadership. Sometimes you don't even see it. Oh Lord, don't make it started. Don't go out of there. Oh.
Well, the devil is active, and
Hmm.
Joan and I have put uh, that kind of thing under the word grief.
Grief. Okay.
And we have told other pastors, young pastors, church planners, who said one of the things that they don't teach in seminary, but
Hmm.
you need to prepare yourself is for grieving.
Hmm.
And I said that grieving is going to happen at different ways. I
Hmm.
mean, sometimes it'll be just the honest grief of losing a dear friend or a member of the church or one of your leaders. And when you're a younger pastor and one of your strong leaders is suddenly killed or dies, that grief is hard.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's the grief of a dead child. Um, but all of those things are more honest. The grief that really hurts is the grief of betrayal. And that can be where suddenly a family leaves and they start talking bad about you in the community, and
Hmm.
they attack your character,
Hmm.
and you find that people believe it, and that people
Hmm.
are turning against you in the church and you don't know why.
Hmm.
And finally somebody says, "Oh, so and so has told us about this, told us about you, told us about," and you're going, "What are you talking about?" You know?
Wow.
And it's like you were put on trial, found guilty, and judged, and you weren't even invited to the courtroom.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then there are the people who try to take part of the church with them. And so Joan and I have experienced grief. Like she was in a Bible study of women for years, and suddenly, um, basically, somebody left the church and cut Joan off, and everybody in that Bible study kind of went with that other person.
Hmm.
And it was like, my wife felt devastated. She felt
Hmm.
really betrayed.
Hmm.
I was with you for years in this Bible study. We were friends. And now all of a sudden, you don't talk to me. And all these other women follow you. And they don't realize what you've done. But I've had some great moments. What I say great, I should use terrible. I've had terrible moments of betrayal
Hmm.
from other leaders in the church. And I want to thank the Lord today that they did not succeed in destroying a New
Hmm.
City
Hmm.
Fellowship. The
Hmm.
Lord protected us and protected me. And I thank God I had a few men around me, some of my elders, who basically they would not let those people destroy my reputation. And I told Joan, we laughed, we said, you know, if they knew the real sins of our life,
Mhm.
our real sins are worse than what they've accused us of. But
Right.
thank God those sins are at the cross, you
Hmm.
know, and I know I'm forgiven. Um, but man, betrayal hurts so, so badly.
Hmm. Yeah. And the other thing, I don't know if you just said this, but when what you're being accused of is not just an internal thing that you're being accused of only in the church. What happens when the accusation starts from outside the church?
Mm.
That is a city related concern, and then it comes into the church. So you've got
Mm,
people in the community who used to trust you, looking at you with we call it slant eyes,
mm.
and then you got the people in the church believing what they're saying about you in the community.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think I've had two of those. Once when the Boston police accused my son of doing something that he didn't do, and for a period of maybe 4 to 5 months, we thought we were going to lose our son,
Mm.
and we thought that we were definitely going to lose the church because of what they were accusing him of. Then I picked up the phone and called the mayor of the city of Boston. And with tears in my eyes, I said, it's one thing for you and I to have a public disagreement, but our families are off limits. We can't be attacking each other's families, and I'm not attacking yours. And what they're accusing my son of, he didn't do. 2 or 3 days after that call, I received a call from a high-ranking police officer who said, I have some good news. We found the person who did what we
Huh.
were accusing your son of doing, and it's
Wow.
over. And picking up the phone and calling Karen and letting her know that it's over. But the damage was done to my son that he has never 100% fully covered from
Mm.
emotionally of that
Mm.
experience. And then the other one for me was when the federal government had a prosecutor who was going to indict me and another pastor for something that I didn't even have any knowledge of. But because I was a part of the organized group, that the district attorney said, we're going to take him, he's getting too big for his britches. We're going to take him down a notch. Fortunately, the grand jury did not decide to indict me or the other pastor. And the beautiful thing through both of those was that the church stood so solidly with Karen and I and our
Mm. Mm.
family that it got us through. Now, can you
Yes.
imagine if the church was trying to get rid of you and
Oh,
one of those things happened? So
yes.
you had the pain from the inside.
Yeah.
Now you have something from the outside. That's enough to destroy you.
Absolutely.
So so
Absolutely.
have you had experiences where the leaders of your church stood by you 100% and you felt that love and you felt that support?
Yes. When these people inside the church tried to betray me, the rest of the elders stood with me.
Good. Yeah.
And, you know, and they frankly came to me. One was a deacon who took several people with him
Mm.
and wrote all horrible letters and said, you know, I found out later he had said bad about me in a Sunday school class. He'd said bad about me in a small group Bible study. He was spreading lies about me. And he had prophecies that he wrote in letters, and he mailed them out and said, and he would say, well, this isn't me. God gave me this dream
That's
about
bad.
how bad Randy is and how about bad the church is. I mean, it was he wouldn't name me by name, but it was totally obvious when you read the letter. Oh, this is who he's talking about. And
Mhm.
he wouldn't own up to his slander. You know,
Mhm.
he tried to appear as the really good guy. And what but my one of my chief elders came to me and he said, you know, he's jealous of you. And it had never occurred to me. I said, what, why is he, you know, he's not, he has no he has no ability to become the pastor of this church. So why
Mhm.
would he be jealous of me?
Mhm.
Well, he was screwed up in his head.
Mhm.
And later on, some of the people who went with him to another church, they left our church. One girl, she said, "Hey, how's New City doing?" And you could tell by the way she was asking, she just assumed that we were kind of falling apart after they
Yeah.
left. And the
Yeah.
reality is we grew,
Wow.
once that
Wow.
dissension was gone, we were unified and we could move
Wow.
forward.
Right.
And
Right.
so she was shocked. Oh, really?
Yeah, all I can say about all of this is it taught me how to learn because I had to learn this. It taught me how to love the people who were trying to upset. I mean, while I was going through it, I didn't love them while the accusations were made because I needed that emotion of feeling betrayed and being hurt to protect me
Mm, mm,
psychologically. But when I came out of, how did you feel when you came out the wilderness?
mm.
Then learning how to love them was the growth and maturity that I needed to be able to continue on. Because when you don't love them, when you are digging and finding fault and don't recognize that that God loves you, that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. We weren't perfect.
Yes. Preach
While
the
we were yet
gospel.
sinners, Christ died for us. I need to love this person now because one, I just love them. But after I was loved them and I could step away from my emotions, I saw what was the driving emotion, the driving psychological depravity that
Mm,
they were dealing with, and
mm.
had hoped that they could get the help that they needed. Because as
Yeah.
you said, when they move a whole group into another environment and they want to pastor them, that sickness, that brokenness will explode again in that context. It may
You're
not be
right.
with another pastor because you're the
Yes.
pastor, but you're gonna implode and you're gonna hurt those people. So
Yes. Yes. I struggle to forgive.
mm,
And for one guy, I finally wrote him a letter and I said, "Look, if I've done anything wrong, you name the place, the time, and and another person, and we'll sit down and talk about it, and I will repent." Um, and he wrote back and said, "I'm not interested." And
yikes.
a few years later, he finally said, "Yes, let's do that," and we did it. But at that time, as soon as I wrote the letter and made the offer, God took all of the hatred
Yeah,
off of my heart, and I
yeah,
was able to forgive him because
yeah.
the Lord had set me up to say, "You've got to make the offer of reconciliation, and
Mhm,
if it's up to him, if he won't take it, that's his problem." And I will tell you, I think God brought judgment on it. The next few
mhm,
years were terrible for him. And I
mhm,
even prayed that God would take his hand off of him because I could see it as God's punishment on him because of the way his heart was. And
mhm,
um, he lost uh, big time. And
mhm,
but the Lord delivered me from hating him. And
mhm,
one way I find out that I'm hating somebody is they won't come, they're always on my mind. I'm always
mhm.
thinking about them, you know. And I don't need that. I don't need to be thinking about anybody but Jesus. You know, um, they should not be a grudge in my heart. And thank God for the gospel. You were right. Jesus loved you, Bruce, when you were still a sinner. I can't
Mhm.
imagine how he could have done that, but I know he did. And I know
Yeah,
he did the same for me. And
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
so grateful because I'm a worse sinner than any of these people who have betrayed me. I can't imagine why God would be patient to put up with me. I mean, there are times when I thought, surely this is the moment when God should strike me dead. But
Mhm.
the Lord was merciful. Hallelujah.
And, and I would say, as we get ready to close, I've got to close a little earlier, but I would say, because I've assessed you, I've listened to you long enough, I've been around you long enough to know that you're a worse sinner than
Thank you. Your
and
assessment is correct.
and God just forgave me so quickly because there wasn't a whole lot there. But he came to me and said, Bruce, you're broadcasting with Pastor Randy. Could you give me some insight? Because I'm trying to find a way to forgive him. So, and I talked to him, and that's why you were forgiven. Why are you turning red? You're
I'm just, I'm
turning
just,
red.
I'm just waiting for the electrocution to happen between your headphones.
Well, I'm gonna pray us out. And
Okay.
why was this on our minds today? Wow,
Mm.
wow. But there's nothing like that is happening around me now. So
Thank the Lord. I mean,
yes,
these are
yeah,
good days, and
yeah,
praise God for every good day you have.
yeah. Okay, let's pray. Father, we thank you for allowing the electricity to be on so that we could turn on our computers and Zoom to Tennessee and Zoom to Boston. And I thank you for